I'm talking about the Golden Holocaust, comment number 4 about the solutions to tobacco. Golden Holocaust is a fine book. It's written by Mr. Proctor, uh, Robert Proctor, who is a historian, which is a valuable contribution to any kind of. Well, there is a sense of duty here to advocacy per se, I think, more than anything else. But historians have a better grasp of standing aside and maybe looking at it through another looking glass, and therefore are a little bit better. And it's been some 20 odd years since there was any really activism, big activism, 30 years. But certainly the starting point was in about 1993 for the new efforts, or even earlier if you want to include Chipolone and Don Barrett and Horton, and that last flush of what really couldn't get anywhere. But anyway, in the end of the Horton Proctor book, comes to some solutions, and solution number 2 is about taxes, cigarette taxes. And here I really have to say it would be wonderful if taxes were the issue here, and that could solve in some ways the problem. On the other hand, I have to admit, in talking with someone from another country about the idea of taxes, it is taxes, that actually make it so easy for tobacco to run amok of anything they want to, because it's the very idea in the master settlement agreement that creates the horror when you are tethered by the state, particularly the state legislatures, which turn over all the time, and they deal with the money in a way that pleases people temporarily and doesn't have any long-sightedness to it, or even-handedness as well. If they take money from the tobacco industry, they just take it and dispose of it the way it should be disposed, in the hands of somebody else, rather than into health, into advertisement and advocacy to some extent. So Mr. Proctor brings out point 2, raise taxes. If you could raise the taxes higher on new tax revenue should be used for tobacco control and cessation. Well, again, from a historian, this is not breaking ground to any extent, and I totally disagree. And one way is that the dependency of governments on taxes. If you look at this book as more of a global piece, maybe he's got a point, but in the United States, it's not quite going to happen, because we've seen them busted, so to speak. People who were doing all this fantastic lawyering and fantastic advocacy, and still do, to some extent. The whole idea of taxes is simply to allow some meritorious efforts to not control tobacco. The more that's in the master settlement, for example, Mr. Proctor, is that you've got yourself into a bind with the states. The states are married to the idea, and let's just say they increase taxes. Well, you don't want to increase taxes in tobacco-friendly states, even though they don't make any more in Kentucky. Listen, the whole idea of taxes has been the most insipid issue in tobacco, but maybe in another country it would be a viable issue. I think perhaps, and you think of it this way: what if you didn't tax tobacco? Well, let's imagine that as an awful formula, but what if you didn't do that? What would the states be doing with no money from tobacco? Well, I haven't really heard any positive reaction to that. And the only reason you tax tobacco is you don't tax it like a firearm. You don't tax it like liquor. But you tax it because it's a sin tax as well as anything else. SIN. Extending this even beyond the area of the United States and going into Europe or Asia, wherever. Yes, I agree. The cost of the thing is barely half a cent, maybe less, to produce an item that's so destructive. But you know, it's kind of naive to believe that the new tax revenue, when you've had so much, unless you're globally enhancing this argument, and there I might agree to some extent. The states have had so much money, and will have so much money from the Master Settlement Agreement, that they grab this money and they use it. And they use it for the wrong things. And I think someone's pointed out that Washington State doesn't. Well, thank you, Christine Gregoire, for that. But I don't believe it's really being used to any extent to help anyone in this. So to that end, what if you did have no taxes on tobacco? And the issue is here: if you're not tied to tobacco and you're not actually doing things because you're getting paid to do them, what is going to happen is that most likely you're going to try to control them. And if you do control them with those big old ATF initiatives, if you could control them. These are the sins of our country, basically: the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And yet, these are also protected areas. So the only one that doesn't really fit in is tobacco. It's just not necessary toward any end, and the only end is to keeping the hospitals full. Maybe that's a cynical point of view, but I've often thought that chest surgeons would be hopefully not so cynical, and to think that more patients dying from lung cancer would be a better situation for them. Surely, I don't know, but no, I find raising taxes on cigarettes to be an infinitely difficult process in the United States, because of how it's tethered to the states. And certainly the Master Settlement Agreement has this formula where it's going to be difficult to do. So again, on this point, don't think it's going to help. And then on the global level, maybe there is something that is useful here, say in France or Germany or wherever, to prevent, and if you could earmark everything. The problem that I have with taxes is, and marketing, the same thing, is, I have a feeling that they get such a benefit from writing this off on their taxes, wherever they're paid, that they don't really care. And after all, Bronham Williamson wrote, if you think about the gangsterism that's related to non-taxing tobacco, getting it off the reservations cheaply or off of the military bases, which, by the way, are, this is government contracting that's going on there in military bases, so they're selling them cheaper. But the revenues that come out from the tobacco industry are very non-productive, because they just simply write them off. It's just like this whole Master Settlement is written off, and again, tethered to the states. if you're tethered to the states, if you're tied to the ambitions of a state legislature or even a government, this government can exist without writing off taxes and taking that in and saying, well, we won't get any revenue from them because they're being taxed. And then you get your money taxed up front, which is what they do. You're taxing from the government point of view. You're taxing them, and then you're letting them get it right off their marketing, their promos or whatever, at least the ones they're telling you about, and the taxes. It's just a quid pro quo. They get to do it, and if you could do the no, you're not going to get anything out of it. And the government could do that and would do that. Would is more important than could. They could, but they wouldn't. And so what if you didn't tax them at all? Well, that's again a hypothetical. It's about it's again looking at theoretical physics and trying to reverse gravity. It's theoretical. You're not going to be able to do this, and maybe you are, but it's not now yet, I don't think. On the other issues, the first one was ban smoking, the second one was taxes. I hope there's a point here other than I'm not criticizing, I'm basically adding to the argument. Well, what if you just did the opposite? Which is also mythological. You're not going to do it. It's not an historical possibility. You haven't seen it in the past. You won't see it in the future. And yet there is this tie to gangsterism and robbing. And people have made some points on that. Well, Brown Williamson, they and their counsel and counsel for the ad hocs or whatever ad hoc committee, they actually wrote these gangster bills and the smuggling bills. They wrote them and just sent them up to the House and the Senate for passing, and I believe they still stand with some modifications. So the tobacco industry writes its own smuggling laws, so to speak. And then they also are government contractors for the military establishment. So there again, you have an issue in control. And if you do have a revenue issue and you're making something out of it, let's just take the incentive of writing off taxes and marketing as well, because that I think would work, and at the same time I don't see that here. On the other hand, raising taxes has always been the same thing. You do it, and you did it certainly with the master settlement. That was a tax hike. That was it had two sides. It had two sides to it. While you were giving something away to the states, you were also giving them the right to say, oh, if we can't sell enough of our deadly product, we can't kill enough people, then you're just going to have to take less money off the top of our settlement issues. And the lawyers don't have to worry about that, because and the advocacy groups don't have to worry about that. The health people don't have to worry about that, because it's simply the states. And the states are going to do what they think is best for them. Roads and highways, roads and highways, roads and highways. Maybe a little education there. Anyway, point 2 of Mr. Proctor's book, The Golden Holocaust, how to resolve these issues, how to come to a different place. Again, it's the 300-year resolution. When we devolve from one thing, and we're evolving now into another, at least it's recognition. The old Aristotelian concept of we have a dramatic recognition, and we're in that point at this point. Finally, you recognize through the documents that you have there is a point that changes this drama, but and we're still in crisis, and we'll always be in crisis. And I have something along the lines of 300 years. Maybe we will have evolved to the point where we're not going to continue to destroy ourselves and use things like taxes and as an issue. Writing off taxes is a horrendous disincentive to the industry if you could do that. Writing off marketing the same way. Anyway, that's point 2, and this is Mr. Proctor's book, and so that's his point of view. And I just posed another one. What if you didn't tax? What if you didn't do this? Which leads to the question of, well, if you're not in bed with tobacco, what is the incentive for them? And how much control or more control can you have if you're not receiving a great benefit from them? It's kind of wild assertion, but if you keep raising the benefits of raising, or we just need you so much. And so that's what the states are about. The government doesn't need it, but the government gets the bulk of the write-off in marketing and taxing. It's for an accounting of tobacco. They need to be accountable to something. Anyway, this is the comment, Mr. Proctor's book, Historical View of Tobacco, the Golden Holocaust. Comment. Thank you.